Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Rei-Lin, and I'm back today with some Armored Warfare. Something new actually has happened to the game that I guess I might as well talk about because it's something new. That something new is a new premium tank. Believe it or not, a actual new, non-just repainted skin of another tank. It's a new tank. The Tier 7 main battle tank, the Object 187. And as you can see, it's a Russian tank, like any other Russian tank. It's more or less a prototype to the T90. It seems like they had a ton of prototypes to the T90 because there's a lot of premium tanks in the game that seem to share this T90-ish turret and some of the obvious ERA plating mechanics and just the overall look of the tanks has remained kind of the same through basically since the T-72 series of tanks. And this is another Russian tank, and it's another premium Russian tank. I know that's kind of hard to believe, but anyway, let's jump right in and talk about this tank. Now, I appear to have a slight UI bug here. Anytime that I bring up the details window here and I click, it's going to drop this window down a little bit. So I apologize. I don't think it's anything that I've done. It just seems to just happen. So when I start comparing these tanks with, together with another tank, you're going to see the window kind of be lopsided. I don't usually like it when it does that, but it's something that seems to be beyond my control. So starting off statistic-wise, plain as always Russian tank. Damage, penetration, for Tier 7, very good. It's on par with all the other Tier 7 Russian tanks. There's really nothing bad about the damage or the penetration. The reload time is a little over 8 seconds. There are a couple of Russian tanks, like the T-80, I think, and of course the Challengers and other Tier 7s that aren't Russian, that have a little bit higher damage per minute because the reload time can get a little bit lower than what you see here. But this is about on par with all of the other Tier 7 premiums and even Tier 7 non-premium tanks. So the sustained damage is pretty good. Hit points, right in the basic Russian tank hit point range, 2,650. Not bad, not great. It doesn't come close to like the Challenger with over 3,000. And obviously it's not going to do much with the Tier 8s either. But this is about where you're going to land if you have a Russian tank. Is around 2,600 to 2,700-ish hit points. So we're pretty good, on par right there. And of course, now we're going right into the armor. The front hull is 305 millimeters. It's sloped. It has some ERA on it. The sides are only 80, and the rear is only 45. If you're used to playing Russian tanks, this comes as really no surprise. They usually have a decent front end, and that's about it. And this is right alongside every other Russian tank in the game. That 305 is not great at all for Tier 7. Most things are still going to punch holes through you pretty good, but you're going to have to angle pretty well the front of your tank, or they're just, even the bots are going to just punch holes right through the front of your hull. Now, in comparison to that, however, the turret on most Russian tanks, if you've played Russian tanks in Armored Warfare or even World of Tanks, generally have very good frontal turret armor, and this has a assload of frontal turret armor at 770 millimeters. It's the highest of any of the Tier 7s that I've seen, or at least the ones that I own, especially for premium tanks. That's a huge amount of frontal turret armor, and it still has the ERA plating. It's very similar to the T-90's turret, and just as freaking tough. It's actually tougher than the T-90's turret. But the sides, of course, are only 90. The rear is 46. So you think more or less this is a hull down monster. You know, you get this thing hull down and really nothing's going to go through the front of this turret. Even Tier 8s and 9s are going to have trouble shooting through 770 millimeters of armor. So definitely want to get this thing hull down in a hole over a hill a little bit. Like most Russian tanks in the game, the turret front is extremely strong. This is abnormally strong for the tier. So keep that in mind. Max speed, almost 70 kilometers an hour, 69.88. Very, very good. Get this thing going down any kind of slight downslope, and you can really pick up some speed and hurt yourself by flinging yourself off cliff edges or ramming really hard into heavier tanks. So be careful with the top speed on this thing. It's also pretty damn good on the acceleration. 0 to 32, only 5.13 seconds. The vehicle mass, 41,458 kilograms, so semi-light for a main battle tank. Most of the Russian tanks are between 38 and 45,000 kilograms, so they're on the lighter side, but they have the mobility kind of to justify that. Hull traverse, extremely quick, 50.5 degrees per second. It's very, very quick, almost bordering on uncontrollable if you take too many extra crew skills or put in some retrofits to increase your hull traverse. It really does not need it on this tank. Camouflage, no one cares. It's a main battle tank. Now, the view range is only 435 meters. That's average, but it's kind of on the low end. Most Tier 7s have a little bit more than this, 440 to 460 meters of view range. So this is kind of on the lower end of the view range, but it is a main battle tank. View range is definitely not your strong suit when it comes to that. The gun depression in the front is 6 degrees. Most Russian tanks have 4 to 6. Most have 5 on average. So this is a little bit better than average, but don't think you're going to be having an easy time going hull down on this thing, especially if you're in a hilly region or you're trying to crest a ridge and shoot down. It's going to take you pretty much all the way out into the open to do so. So keep in mind, you've only got 6 degrees of gun depression. The accuracy, 0.12, is not bad, especially for Russians. A lot of their tanks are 0.13 and worse, so just keep that in mind that it's good, but it's not sniper good. You're definitely going to hit most of your shots, though. I don't have too much negative to say about the accuracy, considering the cannon size and the fact that it's Russian. Aim time, pretty quick, 1.86 seconds. No complaints really there. And then we got the turret traverse at 22.8 degrees a second. That's not particularly fast. It's not that slow, but if you wanted to use a cruise skill or a retrofit to increase your turret traverse speed, it would not necessarily be a bad thing. So, in a nutshell, that's the stats. But let's take a look how it stacks up. And here's going to be the UI bug. You see how it the window drops down. So let's just take a look at some of the other Tier 7 premiums that I have. Let's compare it to the Challenger 1 Wolf. Now, basically, my overall opinion is if you already own the Challenger 1 Wolf, the Tier 7 main battle tank here, there's absolutely no other Tier 7 premium tank that you really need. The Challenger 1 is so strong in the armor department and the survivability department that the lack of damage that it has per shell, just it adds up. It doesn't matter. You're going to be able to take so many hits from so many tanks at any tier that it really seems a little bit overpowered. But just for comparison's sake, you can see obviously the Challenger is nowhere close in damage or penetration because it's not Russian. But the DPM isn't really much far behind, about 48 damage per minute behind, because the reload time is almost a second off. So keep that in mind. Challenger is a tough as nails, old boots kind of tank, 3,000 health, and that's just the base. But look at the difference, of course, in the armor of this thing. 640 millimeters in the frontal hull, 275 on the sides, and 80 at the rear. So you almost double the effective armor just on the base stats alone over the Object 187. But the Object 187 definitely has more frontal turret armor than even the Challenger 1 at 720 versus the 770. But it doesn't have shit for side turret armor, 405 on the side, 120 at the rear, again effectively double or tripling in some cases the armor of the Object 187. Now, I'm not going to go too crazy here. You can just kind of see that the stats on the Challenger 1 Wolf, it's not as fast. It doesn't get around the battlefield nearly as quickly as the Object 187. This is the, I'm going to go camp a spot and make the enemy have to come and move me out of that spot kind of tank, whereas the Object 187 is more akin to almost a light tank. They need to stay mobile. They've got enough turret armor to be dangerous and hold down positions, but your main objective in the Object 187 is, of course, to just zip around the flanks of most enemies. You don't want to go head on against almost anything, especially if it has missiles, because, well, 2 or 3 missiles and you're pretty much toast for the battle that you're in. Well, let's take a look at another premium Tier 7 Russian tank, the T-80U Shark tank. Well, Right out of the gate, the shark has slightly more damage, but it does have less pin. But it still has more damage per minute because the reload time is a lot lower. It has slightly less health and slightly less hull armor on the front, almost the same on the side and the rear. The turret has much less armor in the front and the same on the side and the rear. It is a faster tank. It gets up to speed a little quicker. It weighs pretty much just slightly more. The whole Traverse is dangerously fast, but it also has more cannon depression at 7 instead of 6. So a little bit better cannon depression, a little worse accuracy, a little bit better aiming time, slightly faster turret. So one-on-one here, the T80 versus the Object 187, you're basically just giving and taking a little bit of one from the other. Neither one is necessarily better or worse than the other. But again, if we wanted to look at, say, another premium tank, now this is a tier 8, the T72B3. And I'm so sorry for the window slowly creeping off the side of the screen here. But even against the tier 8, I mean, if you look, just go right for the armor, the hull in the front is still better on the tier 7. And the turret front is still better on the tier 7 than even the T72B3. Obviously, the turrets are quite different here. But overall, I still have, I think, better games in the T72B3 than I have in the Object 187. I don't know if it's just because the T72B3 has better plating and better spots, or if just the turret works out a little bit more often than the Object 187, but I've had a lot worse games in the Object 187 in the games that I've played in it than I ever did in the T72B3. Overall, both tanks are very similar despite being a tier off from each other. And, the biggest advantage the B3 has is obviously the penetration. It's just slightly more damage, but it does have way more penetration. So overall, the tank isn't that bad. I mean, it's not that great, but it does get the job done. And for a tier 7, if you don't have any other tier 7 Russian main battle tanks, I think it's a decent tank. The biggest problem I have is that it's another Russian tank. Now, obviously, it's a Russian developer. We're going to get tons and tons of premium Russian tanks. I'm fine with that. But you're just looking at the tank itself. It's basically a T90 turret with this funky, barrel on the end here with a little gun break kind of, that's about the only thing that really sets it apart in uniqueness for looks. The rest of the tank pretty much either looks like a cross between a T90 and a T72, and it's a prototype as always. Most of the other tanks were also prototypes for the T90, but there's not a whole lot that sets this thing apart. I really wish they'd get more into the tanks like the Merkava 2D, for example, which is an extremely unique tank. I mean, it's an autoloader. It looks different. It plays different than a lot of other tanks. Now, of course, it's not a Russian tank, but it doesn't have to be a Russian tank. It can be any nation's tank, as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's different. The play style would be different. I mean, maybe this would be a good opportunity to put a Russian tank in there that has a crap ton of hull and side hull armor and not so strong turret armor. Or maybe it has a much faster firing gun or even an autoloader. I mean, there's tons of unique things about a lot of the Russian tanks, and I'm sure there are prototypes all over the place that they could put in that are actually different from all the other Russian tanks. So right now, I'm not going to recommend that you get this tank. It's not that expensive on the website, but it's not, I don't even think that I can show you. I can try. It's the Ace of Spades deal. And I know, oh no, not another freaking deal, right? Yeah, here we go. So I can't exactly show you how much gold it is. It's not quite 6,500 gold. They have these two other packages where you get the OF-40. I don't recommend the OF or the OFF 40 for anyone. I thought it was garbage, and I'm pretty sure they haven't really changed much about it. Fast firing sniper tank if you want it. Now the bigger bundle here for 6,500 gold isn't necessarily a bad deal if you don't have the OFF 40. You get the Object 187 and the Type 59 2 Alpha, the legendary Type 59. But the Type 59 is only like a tier 3 main battle tank, and it's like, well, I'm not going to be playing much of the low tiers myself, but if you have the gold 6,500, I mean, it's not horrible. 6,500, so you're looking at somewhere around 40 bucks or so for that package. So it's not a horrible deal to get this tank just by itself. You get a couple of boosters, and it does in fact come with a level 5 crew. Now it's only got 2 crew, the driver and the gunner, but they're already at level 5. You can put both of your skills of your choice in immediately. You don't have to wait on leveling up your crew. So there is a little bit more of an advantage with this package deal, or just this particular tank if you buy it as an individual tank, than before. So if all of that sounds alright to you, I mean, you're going to spend, like I said, around 35 to 40 bucks depending on which package deal you go with. I would just get this tank but just because it's an actual new tank. It's a separate tank. It's not just a reskin of a T80 or a T72 or, so at least in that respect, it's unique for that. But outside of the gun brake and a couple of the incredibly good frontal turret, I just don't think the tank is that unique or anything that really stands out from all of the other normal Russian tanks at tier 7. Anyway, I've got a replay I wanted to show you, and you can maybe decide for yourself based on how the replay goes, whether or not you think it's worth it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Take care. I'll see you on the battlefield. And here we are on Erebos. I actually like this map. It's kind of spread out and it's kind of fun. There's a lot of stuff to shoot at, a lot of different kinds of angles, and it's a night map, so you get the pretty sparks lighting up the area and stuff like that. But starting out here, I immediately noticed that for some reason, because I'm an idiot, I forgot to pack my PvE repair kit. I was about right here when I looked down and noticed that I forgot to resupply it. Keep that in mind, guys and gals out there. When you buy a new tank and you're setting it up for the first time, that you have to check that little box at the top, which is now in a different spot, which is probably why I didn't think of it due to the UI, that you need to hit the little checkbox that says auto resupply, or you're going to be like me and starting to take damage and with no way to get my ammunition or my health back, or to even respawn if things should go really, really badly. And of course, they're starting to go kind of badly for me already. The AMX is a tank destroyer that can easily go through my sides and, as you saw, right through the front. Now, I didn't really have the most perfect angle for the front, but considering it's a bot, you would think that at some angling I would have maybe bounced a shot, but there is no way that was going to happen. Again, I'm taking light damage at this point because it looks like they're loading HE, or it's just hitting my ERA and getting mostly absorbed, which thankfully I am happy to say, yes, it works. So we're just moving around. I don't have the gun depression to really go after the guy over the hill, so I decide I'm going to stay kind of maybe in this little dip, so might just hit my turret if I get shot at and help my teammate out here. Because we ended up with a lot of LAVs and stuff like that in a lot of my games lately, or tanks that just generally don't have that much armor, and so I needed to move up and kind of take them out. I want to take out the AMXs, the 10 RCRs, as quickly as possible for the most part, because their guns really do pack a wallop if you let them sit there and go off on them. Now here I decided I might as well ram this guy, and I took a little bit of damage. I do take the crew skill now that increases how much ramming damage I do in pretty much all of my main battle tanks, as long as they're somewhat heavy. Now this isn't necessarily a heavy enough tank to be doing much ramming in, but it's pretty much the only perk that's going to help improve my damage in any noticeable way. I didn't really need hull traverse speed improved on this tank. It goes more than fast enough for me personally, so it might be something you check out if you are looking to get your crew skills up and running. I would suggest the ramming damage in most of your main battle tanks at this point. Now here we are with the dreaded Terminator and his damned side armor absorbing my TAM shells and his ERA absorbing missiles. Luckily he shot a missile and just blew itself up right into the truck. I'm aiming and trying to get a nice shot into his lower front plate because it's a very, very easy target, especially now that they've changed the models around. And you can see he's still pretty tough, even with the amount of penetration I have. Going through his sides, even with armor piercing, just doesn't work that well on the Terminators. But you look at that nice juicy front lower plate and I can go right through that, no problem whatsoever. And thankfully he's not focused on me, because if he was, he would probably be shooting missiles at me. And I can eat some of the missiles because I do have ERA, but it's mostly on the turret and my sides. But because only my turret is really that strong, even if I eat the missile and it absorbs some of the damage, the explosion can still do quite a bit of damage to me, even through the ERA. I'm still kind of going around the map here. I knew that the cap circle was down there. I was just wanting to try to stay in the bushes to give myself a little bit more camouflage. I was thinking, well, maybe I just jump off the side here, but considering I don't have any way to repair my tank if something goes wrong, I figured, well, I'll just take the extra time because I do have the speed for it to run all the way down here. My teammate had turned around and he was coming from the other direction, but you see I blew his doors off completely by racing him here by going around this side. Now, he is obviously not as fast, but he that really doesn't matter because, you know, I got here first and we're just going to take this thing. Now, the rest of the fight's going to be back up where I just came from, and thankfully I have teammates that knew what they were doing and they didn't get themselves killed when they went up along the north to get the other objectives. And so I move up, and now we're going to start shooting everything to death here, as part of the objective is just to blow the crap out of everything. But with the amount of tanks that are incoming, I thought, well, I'll let somebody else with a slightly faster fire rate take out these buildings. I wanted to take out the tanks that, like this, have a lot of missiles. The Sheridan and its gun is still pretty damn damaging, but it has the missiles, and that's what I fear the most in a lot of tanks like the one I'm driving. You just don't have much in the way of ERA does help, but eventually it's going to get blasted off your tank, and you're really going to be sitting around wide open against tanks that have missiles. So you got the Saber, it shoots missiles, and there's just missiles everywhere right now. So I decided I'm going to support my team, come in through the side from the rear, get some surprise butt sex. Now here I see an expeditionary tank. These tanks are extremely dangerous. I can't understand how they seem to do so much freaking damage, because mine doesn't seem to do the kind of damage that theirs does. It's really weird. Sometimes I'll take a nice 450, 500 damage shot from an expeditionary tank that's a light tank that doesn't necessarily do that much damage, so it's kind of confusing sometimes. But and then we got a spaceship. I haven't seen one of those, or I should say starship. I haven't seen one of those in a long time, but you see the missiles are incoming. They're just, Swing Fire is swinging away with his rockets, and so I just gonna hide behind the damn rocks. My accuracy just wasn't quite enough, and hit the rock instead. But you see my whole team is now hightailing it the hell away and leaving me here to fend for myself with a couple of tanks that are flinging missiles left and right. Thank God there was a building here, because otherwise I would have probably just ate every one of those rockets and died. The starship is slowly lumbering away. I don't know where he was going. I just know I wanted to finish him off. I was going to go ahead and help my team, but everybody on my team is now off to the east, trying to make it back to the ship, which I wouldn't blame anyone for doing if we were really low on time, but we're really kicking ass here. I mean, we've got almost 5 minutes left in the game. There's no reason to rush off and just finish off the map. You might as well stick around and do a little bit more damage, and that's what I'm planning on doing right now. Because I don't have the repair kit, I can't heal myself and I can't get my ammunition back. I just noticed that I've switched over to my heat rounds at this point, because that's all I've got left. I do have rockets, but I don't really like the rockets because they have long reload times and I have to sit in one spot and guide them, as all the rockets are. It's just kind of, dangerous to do in a tank like this when you really need to be hulled down more than anything. You don't really want to be sitting out in the open doing anything as far as, flinging missiles. But thankfully we're about to win the game because our team is capping. There's only a few seconds left, and I just wanted to chase this guy down and get some freaking damage. He just took a beating. Seems like I had to drive 20 miles to kill this guy, and he just kept right on trucking. I've only got a few shots left, and we've only got a few more seconds, 14 seconds left. I was hoping to come up behind one of these other tanks that I saw. It was spotted, and he's disappeared. but I get spotted. I was expecting him to be on the right, but it's actually another tank that wasn't spotted at all over here on the left. So I put a nice big 710 damage shell into his turret, and then the game is over just like that. Nice explosions, nice little helicarrier here. It's pretty nice. I mean, I do still like the look of the game. And now let's get back into the garage, and I'll see you in just a moment, and we'll get the stats on how this game went. And victory! Back into the garage. Blue star, shooter, and did some teamwork because no one died. Now, I was obviously number 1 on the damage, but I am Russian, and so I do get that a lot. I bounced about a little over 3,000 damage, mitigated by my armor. Not bad on the experience and the credits either. So, again, this is just an average Russian tank. I get these kind of results in pretty much any Russian tank that I drive, and despite it being tier 7, it's still pretty damn good. It's got more turret armor than even the tier 8s. You're going to have to get up into the T90 MS, tier 9, before your frontal turret armor and some of your frontal hull armor starts to get even higher than what it is. It's just a playstyle. If you like the Russian playstyle, the tank is fine. If you don't have a tier 7 Russian premium, it just fits right in there between all the other normal Russian tanks in the middle of the tech tree. So there's really no downside to it. It's not a bad, horrible deal, but unless you're really pining for a Russian main battle tank at tier 7, I would go with the Challenger 1 Wolf in a heartbeat over any other tier 7 premium, or even the Merkava 2D, just because it's a unique experience and it's a lot of fun to drive. Object 187, in a nutshell, good tank. Kind of up in the air whether I think it's honestly worth it if you've already owned other Russian tanks of that tier or above that tier. Still, I hope that I've shed some light on that. That is my opinion. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please press the like button down below. It really does help out my channel. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my channel, you can click down the bottom of your screen right now. That'll get you all the latest updates every time I upload something new to my channel. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care, and I'll talk to you all next time.